All right, here we go. We're back, Brigadoon Radio. These are our fancy props, Miranda. We're with Miranda West, who is the publisher and founder of the Do Book Company. Here at Brigadoon Radio, we talk to founders and thought leaders that are doing cool stuff, shaping commerce and culture. And I think what you all are doing with the Do Book Company is fantastic. So, Miranda, thanks for being here. Where are we finding you today?
You're finding me in East London, in England,
Fantastic.
where it's unusually hot.
Where exactly is East London? If I'm looking at the river, what side of the river am I at?
You're north.
I guess that's a good question. If I'm at, like, say, the Tate Modern, if I'm at the Tate Modern Museum, looking at the Thames, and kind of like
you're going directly north. You're
That's
going
north.
directly north, and then you're veering to the east. We're just out beyond Shoreditch.
I love it.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
so it's a
you're
bit more
towards the you're towards the ocean, or the English Channel.
That was miles away, Mark.
But I mean, if London, like, eventually that river ends up in the English Channel, that's what I'm saying.
Eventually, all rivers end up somewhere. No, yeah,
That's a good answer.
Southeast of England. It's unusually hot. We're kind of like the east of London is slightly more. It's known for being slightly more creative, I would say, than the west, which is a bit more Hugh Grant, Love Actually, that kind of.
Oh yeah, the east is there's that great show, The EastEnders, right? Isn't that the?
That's a very, very long running drama, TV drama. Yeah, prime time. Yeah.
Wow. I love London. It's an absolutely great city. Do you feel lucky to live there? Do you enjoy living there?
Oh my God, I love living here.
Yeah,
I love living here. Yeah, I'm like the London's best advocate. I've got raising 2 children here. It's incredibly diverse. People are doing stuff. There's a vibe. It's happening.
Yeah, I've never had a bad experience there, and it's also very approachable city. There's a lot of green space. The tube system seems very efficient. The cabbies actually know where the hell to take you when you jump in a cab, which is fantastic. I don't know. It does seem like it would be a fun place to raise children too, because there's so many museums and shops and food.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of families living here, and I mean, we always say we're going to do the museums and stuff, and of course, no, anyone that lives here, no, people go like twice a year.
That's funny.
It's good to know it's available. It's there, and you can get there in 45 minutes if you want to. But we're almost like too spoilt for choice. There's so much theatre, so many amazing exhibitions and stuff. And then, but you've got your life here. So, you're working and you're doing school stuff and you're, seeing friends. So that's always like a bit of an add-on.
I think I'm here in Washington, D.C. and we've got, the Smithsonian and all these crazy museums and universities. But in the last few weeks, I've been very dedicated about this. Is try to do like one cultural thing a week. And I actually discovered a map museum last week, which was pretty fantastic. Yeah, none of my friends or family are joining me on this. They think I'm a bit of a nerd, but it's fun. I don't know. There's all kinds of cool stuff happening in our city.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. So tell me about the Do Book Company. You're the founder and publisher, which is great. You're an entrepreneur. You're a publisher, which is, I think, it's a very interesting kind of old school title from a startup kind of situation. And you've had a long career in publishing, and you kind of made the leap into startup. So I'm curious about like the skill set, your talent stack, and then your decision to say, hey, I want to do something a bit more entrepreneurial.
Yeah, all of the things. Okay. I have worked in book publishing for my whole sort of working life. So fresh out of uni as a sort of, junior assistant, and it is quite a traditional industry, but it's also one of those industries that likes to try at least and stay slightly ahead of the curve. It's definitely open to innovation and things. And I think that's a result of, the people working in the industry who are predominantly creative, and all the authors and things. So it's a creative industry, but what I like about it, it's commercial too. So it sort of sits at that sweet spot of like, sure, you're, dealing with writers and designers, and you're making a product. And also you're making a product that's based, certainly for our books, that's based around ideas, and doing things a bit differently and positive change and stuff, and packaging all of that up. And ultimately you're then trying to sell it. the other end of at the other end of it, it's retail. You know, I'm making a product to sell, which you know, it takes authors a long time to sort of accept that. And you're saying, don't forget to tell your friends you've written a book. So they might buy a copy. But yeah, I've kind of, you know, I've reconciled myself with that now, because if I wasn't selling books all the time, we wouldn't be in business, you know, and that's what funds the new books, you know, and that's what funds, you know, the sort of, you know, paying the designers, paying the you know, the editors and authors and all of that. So yeah, and the office space, overheads.
If we were to draw like a kind of like graph, a linear graph, yeah, you get the sales aspect of it, you have the creativity, and then you have the execution. Do you start at the sales end, or do you start at the creative end, or does it depend, or does it really matter?
Yeah, no, well, personally, I start at the creative end with the kernel of the idea. So just to sort of backpedal slightly, we're the sort of publishing arm of an event called the Do Lectures, which is kind of like, it's been described as TED Talks meets Burning Man meets something else. Yes, thank you, Marc.
I brought some props.
Do
Lectures.
So just to give your listeners a bit of background, that's held in West Wales, which is like, you couldn't get further away from where I am. It's like a 6-hour drive, and it's interminably long to get there. But once you're there, it feels quite cut off, like you've landed in this magical place, and it's on the coast. It's very rugged and wild. And there's a farm there, and that's owned by the founders, Claire and David Hyatt. And every year, excluding the last 2 years because of COVID, obviously, they invite 20 of the world's doers. So change makers, entrepreneurs, innovators, anyone that's kind of doing something that will, you know, create positive change in the world. So it could be a farmer, it could be a sheep farm, you know, or it could be, or an artist, or an environmentalist, you know, or a tech entrepreneur. So they've had some, you know, semi-famous people there. They've had people that you haven't heard of, but all of them will then share their story, which is a 20-minute talk with their backstory, why they do what they do. And it's honest and authentic, and it's emotionally charged. And, you know, you're sort of sitting in this lecture barn, and it's quite an incredible experience. And there's only 100 attendees a year. Sells out every year. There's a sort of, you know, clamor for tickets when they release them. And it's a whole experience. It's like 4 days on the farm, and, you know, you meet everyone because it's small numbers. It's quite intimate. And then I have, well, in my view, like one of the best jobs in the world, but I've then got carte blanche to sort of approach any of the speakers, because we only publish people who've spoken at this event.
Oh, interesting.
And ask them, do a tap on the shoulder, and ask them if they'd consider publishing a book, or if they've ever considered publishing a book. And actually, it was a similar approach I took back in 2011, 2012, when I basically came across the Do Lectures, hadn't heard of it. I watched a talk online. All the talks are posted online, by the way, and they're sort of free to watch. And they've had, like, you know, a significant number of views. And anyway, somebody sent me a link to one of the talks because it was related to books. And I just thought, because I used to be at Penguin Random House, so I was commissioning there. I was editorial director there.
Wow.
But at the time, I had hung up my shoes, and I was living in Switzerland, which is a whole other story with the family. And so I was kind of like looking for, just deciding what I might do next. I suppose I was at that, you know, the crossroads. And I knew that I wanted to sort of continue working, but maybe do something, you know, a bit more, that I had a bit more control over. And anyway, I watched this talk. And then because I was commissioning for Random House, I was like, what is this? Where is this? Why don't I know about this? I was doing like lots of, you know, running a sort of non-fiction imprint there. And we'd done, you know, we did Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week, and we did all the Dale Carnegie books and rework by Jason Fried. And so anyway, we were doing in parenting and, you know, lots of self-improvement, personal development books. So I couldn't understand why I hadn't come across it. And then now I know it's because they don't do any marketing. Anyway, spent some time on the site, loved it. in a weird twist, I was actually born in Wales, but we won't go into that.
You have to have a Wales connection.
So yeah. So that was my entry point. No, so I just emailed the info out address. I was quite used to sending sort of speculative emails, potential writers and agents and things. So I just sent an email saying, have you ever considered publishing books by your speakers? I think what you're doing is amazing. And, I love it. And didn't actually expect to hear anything back. And then that afternoon, I had an email from David, who is the founder, along with his wife, Claire, saying, we have actually considered that because we're real book lovers, but we realized quite quickly that we didn't have the time or the expertise to develop the idea. And of course, at the time, it was one of those serendipitous things because I actually had a ton of time, bizarrely, and the expertise because by then I'd been in publishing for like 2 decades. So I knew how to publish a book, standing on my head sort of thing. And I knew what would make a good book. I hadn't set up a business before and run a business. So at that point, it's interesting you introduced me as an entrepreneur because at that point, I couldn't be further from being an entrepreneur. So I then had to go on to, Google, how do I register a company? So anyway, basically we had a couple of chats. I went to the event. It was kind of what I expected and more. And then I started approaching authors. We worked out how, the mechanics of the deal would be set up. And essentially we landed on me setting it up as a separate company. So We're an independent publishing company. And then the Do Lectures gets a royalty. So it's kind of a licensing deal as well. So we pay the authors a royalty from every copy sold and the Do Lectures. A decent amount goes out in royalties, but that's fine.
No, I love this idea. Yeah, like coming from Penguin Random House, where I don't know, there must be thousands of employees. There's people all over. That's like a huge proper company, and then suddenly going to a 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 person operation where I'm curious about this because I've read some of your stuff where you've talked about you're actually going to the post office to post the books and get them in the mail.
100%. Oh yeah, literally.
It
wasn't even a 5-person company. It was a 1-person company. And then gradually it was 2. But we're still really, I think once you've done the bootstrapping thing and you've started from zero, with 0 Instagram followers, 0 customers, it's a terrifying place to be. And then you sort of launch your first, the first books come out. And I remember you sort of pressing, the website went live and then sort of waiting for this fanfare. And then those first orders, oh my gosh, I was so grateful. I could probably tell you the names of the people who ordered from us first. And I could certainly tell you the names of the authors who agreed to do a book with me when I had no company. The whole thing was they were just trusting that I would actually get it, make it happen and get it going.
So brilliant.
So there was of them.
And your other kind of your friends and colleagues and associates in kind of the incumbent traditional publishing, did they think you're crazy or were they supportive, a combination of it? And like, how did you deal with that kind of?
Well, I kind of just sort of, squirreled away and spent about a year or so doing R&D. So I think there was a few that knew what I was up to. But I mean, to be honest, it's so intense working in those big publishing houses. I kind of, and actually I did use some of the freelancers, that I had on my books. They were quite happy to continue working with me. But no, in terms of what they thought, they were actually quite admiring that I was doing it. Because I think, a lot of them harbored this dream and probably still do of sort of running their own, company. So you're not being told, I mean, you're always encouraged to come up with your own ideas and stuff. But I mean, a lot of the time you're sort of doing what we used to call publishing by numbers, which is, you're asked to look at the bestseller list and you're basically asked to publish something along those lines. So that, and then it sort of becomes a bit, you sort of lose that originality. So, and actually bizarrely, and people can't believe this, but it's true, I really don't take much notice of what else is being published. And I don't know whether that's, terrible and like really like poor business, or whether actually it's brilliant. I just don't know. Anyway, I literally try not to look, because so that way I'm not influenced at all by what else is out there. Because obviously I go into bookshops and things, but as soon as you see books, it'll naturally sort of filter in and be like, oh God, why didn't I think of that? God, that's so good. Look at that subtitle. I love that cover. And then, and then gradually what you're publishing becomes this sort of, a marinade of other people's ideas. So I kind of, where possible, stick to the source, which is the Do lectures. And then there's a sort of alchemy involved in terms of the idea and approaching the speaker, which is, I think this is a great idea, and I could see this working as a book. And it could be.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I love the idea too. You have like a foundation around the Do lectures and like kind of that ethos and that vibe, and being in this barn setting in the middle of nowhere of Wales. It's very rustic and romantic, and it doesn't really. And Do itself doesn't really play by the normal rules. And as a consumer myself of books, like I can't get enough books. I have to like sneak them into my house. My wife hates that I have so many books, but it's like my passion. But it's interesting when people are like, oh, you should read this book or read that book. And you're kind of like, dude, that book is already out there. Like, it's just packaged differently. I do kind of like the approach where not paying attention to what's happening is almost a superpower, because you're just like, this is what we do. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And these are the people we want to work with. I think and I would imagine your readers respect that.
I think so. Well, next year I love the fact that there's banging from your house, and it's not me that's got the sound issues.
Yeah, we're having a little construction here today.
Goody two shoes. Yeah, I think so. And also, well, who knows? But anyway, I feel that it gives us a clear, we have a clear identity. I know exactly what we would and wouldn't publish. Our readers have a sense, I think, of what they're going to get. And I think they quite like to be surprised by like the next book that's coming out, because it's slightly unpredictable. And I think it keeps me engaged and excited. And, who knows, but hopefully it keeps the community like engaged and excited. And then they gradually, because they all look, we've got this sort of brand.
I have a few myself.
Series identity. So then, people get one, and then they get another, and then they look really cool on the shelves. And also, what was quite telling, in the first year, the year that we launched, the books were in the Conran store, the Design Museum, Museum of Modern Art in New York, in the gift shop. They were in all these places, which is largely, well, almost entirely down to our cover designer, I think, who got us in there. That's a artist called James Victori, who we've worked with from the get-go. And actually, your listeners might be amused to hear that when we started, I was like, really wanted the covers to, the books to have a strong identity and to stand out, because let me tell you, Marc, there's a bazillion books published every year. Like, a lot of books. So,
yeah, no, that's a lot.
So how are these, so I was constantly thinking and asking, how on earth are these going to stand out? We're just going to be ignored. And also we don't have those budgets that, the Penguin Random houses have, where they will buy space in a store. They will pay for, a window space, or to have the books on a table, or to have the books in the, a certain place, so they're highly visible. So it's like, right, how on earth are we going to do that? And it was just, and it was down to like almost pure creativity, I would say, on his part. So anyway, we had this arrangement. Obviously I had some money, but I didn't have tons of money. So I was like, look, I'm going to pay you, but I'm not going to pay you what some of your other clients might pay. I think at the time he was working with Jack Daniels and MailChimp and, these like huge businesses. And he was like, okay, Miranda, I'll work with you. And I'll do this because I think it sounds quite cool. And he loves books as well. But you have to give me full creative control, which basically translated as the design that he sent, I printed. So there was none of this like, oh, I'm not sure about that shade of blue, or, oh, could you just move the arrow slightly up to the left? And, oh, I can't read the subtitle, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how it worked. So that was basically utterly terrifying / very sort of quite thrilling.
But it kind of fits in with the vibe of kind of what you're doing and the do lectures, and like what you see is what you get. I don't know. That's kind of refreshing. And it's probably, I don't know, maybe on the other side too, maybe it speeds the editorial process because you're like, well, this is the cover. We're going to go to print. This is it.
Well, and also what's interesting is that all the authors kind of just get it, you know, and they're like, oh, well, you know, we love the covers. We would, you know, be honored to have James doing a cover for us. There's been literally one instance where the author point blank refused to go ahead. And then we were in this sort of real stalemate. I mean, it was the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, there was James, there was me, there was the author, and nobody was blinking. Because I had basically said, well, this is the agreement that we have. You know, I don't go back and say, and also I quite liked it. Yeah. Anyway, of course, in the end, I did end up going back to James. So I thought, well, actually, his name's on the cover. If he really cannot live with it, let's see what we can do. And then James did actually do one other one. But that was a sort of pretty much a take it or leave it. And I was like, fine.
Yeah, as a publisher, it seems like, I mean, you're out there seeing what's happening. You're trying to discover new voices. I mean, it helps you have like the do network. But that seems got to be part of your job. And then it's also managing these egos because you have or sensibilities, or, you know, like people are like, hey, I've written this book, my name's on it, you know, how's it going to go out? How do you deal with that? Or do you have any advice on managing
creative egos?
Yeah, creative egos. Have you found maybe that's your own next book?
Literally, I do that every day. Yeah. I think it takes a certain type of person.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you better at it now, or are you always learning from that process? Or there's probably no one way to manage.
I think I've always been this. I don't think I've changed my sort of style. I think, you know, it's like you have to have a lot of respect for what they do and what they're capable of doing. I like to think I'm quite supportive, but also there's a line as well. You know, when I'm editing, I think I'm quite a ruthless editor, really. You know, I mean, I'll literally be like the line going through. But also, we're not talking about novel. It's not fiction.
Right.
You know, it's non-fiction. I think there's a slight difference. I think fiction probably verges more into the art form, you know,
right,
the novel and the literature. And I think that's a very different thing. Whereas the non-fiction, it's quite linear. You know, we have a book proposal from the get-go that kind of gives us the structure of the book. So we all have this quite clear sense of, you know, how it's going to progress, you know. I don't know, it has a sort of form that's actually, when you sort of, if you were to sort of unpick it, you would see that actually that kind of underpins almost all of the books.
Yeah.
Regardless of the topic. So it's kind of have that. So we have the book proposal. So we'll have a bit of back and forth with that in terms of, you know, the chapters, what's going to be in each chapter. You know, you've got your opener, and then the sort of why is it, you know, why is it relevant to now and stuff. And then you've got the big ideas and, you know, how to go about it. Because basically all of our books, because they're do books. Right, so, right. You know, the strapline is books to inspire action. So by the end of the book, we want somebody to have enough information so they can actually go and do the thing.
Yeah.
But similarly, there's a fine line, because I don't want them to be so overwhelmed with information that actually then the fog descends again. So it's kind of, so we're producing this book whereby, you know, they're introduced to it. They've got said, okay, like, I want to give this a go. It has to be quite motivating. You know, the writing, they're all 20,000 words. So they're quite concise, you know, they're concise guides. As I like to say, they focus on the doing, not the background theory.
Right.
I think this is kind of what sets the books apart. And this has been the case from the get-go. even like, the book about growing vegetables. It was like, right, the subtitle is start with 10 simple vegetables. You're not going to grow all of the things. You're going to start with 10. You're going to see that it grows. You're going to eat it. It's going to taste delicious. And then you're going to do it again. And one of our bestsellers is, because it's not just sort of, books for creative entrepreneurs and things. We also have a strand, or what we used to call the slow living series, where you're kind of using your hands.
Right.
We've got one. So one of our bestsellers is Do Sourdough. And it is just about making sourdough bread.
I love sourdough. I need that book. I still haven't mastered sourdough, so maybe that'll be the next book I purchase.
Let me tell you, in 2020, when I was doing my trips to the post office because of lockdown, I couldn't send them out quick enough. That was hilarious. That was like our best-selling book of 2020. That and Do Pause.
Sourdough. What a time.
Yeah. That's the idea. Yeah.
I just want to ask you like 2 more questions before we go. Just step back as like a publisher yourself.
5 minutes.
What's that?
I feel like we've been talking for 5 minutes.
No, we're it's half past the hour. I think we're up to 30 minutes. So. Well, we can keep going. We can make.
I haven't even started yet. I'm going to talk about my career. Yeah.
We can make this a 95-minute time. Well, no, I'm happy to keep going. Anyways.
Yeah, go on.
Just as a publisher, big picture, people are kind of obsessed with books, especially in kind of like the thought leadership space, creative, like, with their ideas out there. Some people look at books as almost like the best business card you can have. Can you just, from a publisher, if somebody's actually selling books, what's the best way? Are books the superpower? And how should a creative thought leader type person work with the publisher?
Okay. I've actually seen that books in general are a calling card, a great calling card. Yeah. There's still this kind of, slight allure around the halo effect of once you're a published author. I mean, it almost doesn't matter what you've published, but once you can say you're a published author, for some reason, it is still carries weight, and I've seen it. It opens doors. It leads to like more client work. People get more gigs, more speaking engagements and things. I mean, it kind of depends on what you do, but yeah, there's definitely this sort of cachet around being a published author.
Right.
Oh gosh, in terms of like getting into the industry, well, it's kind of like getting into I always think it's very much like the music industry. I mean, I'm constantly breaking new artists because. The tapping on the shoulder at the event, a lot of the speakers haven't even considered publishing a book before. So I'm coming along and I'm making life, it's super easy for them. They're like, yeah, okay. And then I've sort of, know how to do it all and basically do it with them and the team. But for a lot of people, and we get book proposals quite often now from people, but because you have to have done a talk, we can't develop them. So
can I ask you about the book proposal process? Is that still a good tool, or would you if somebody wanted to write a book, should they spend more time speaking? Is there an easy path one way or the other? Does the book proposal still work?
I think the speaking, you're putting your head above the parapet, so you might catch the eye of a commissioning editor, but basically the book has to work in book form. So, I would always do the proposal and then recommend you either get an agent, a literary agent, who will then know exactly which editors to send it to and which publishing houses, which is an absolute minefield. Or you have to buy this book called The Writers and Artists Yearbook that's updated every year. Because also the publishers, they're constantly buying each other and, there's acquisitions that are happening all the time. I mean, that's all at that, that level. A lot of the publishers are hugely profitable, actually, as business, as businesses, especially in 2020. Oh my gosh. So agents, if you don't have contacts in the publishing world and you're just a sort of, one-man operation, one-man band, and you want to get your book published, I'd probably recommend getting an agent. And the agent doesn't have to be a big agent. It just has to be somebody that's got, a Rolodex of contacts and knows the right knows where to submit your proposal to.
Right.
Because otherwise it is just landing on someone's desk. They don't know who you are. If you don't have any sort of proof of, you haven't written much before, back to what I was saying earlier about it being a commercial operation, you're asking a company to invest in the region of £10,000 or more in you and your idea. So they have to know it's going to sell. So the reason they're obsessed with social media and, podcasters and like people who speak and stuff is because those people have an audience. So at least then they're sort of thinking, well, worst case, we'll sell to that group of people, and hopefully there'll be a secondary or tertiary audience beyond that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
If the book doesn't sell, then they're basically, if a lot of writers think more commercially in terms of why would somebody want to invest in me and my idea? No, but I mean, and seriously, and who wants to read about this? I always think you need to name, be able to like literally list 10 people that that would absolutely love to read the book. Whenever I commission him,
I like that idea too. Like from a communication standpoint too, it's like, who's the audience? Who you're writing for? Like, how in your mind's eye can you see this person? Yeah. What do they look like? What are they doing? Yeah. That's good.
Why should they care?
Right.
Well, it's like people, I mean, to put it bluntly, I mean, people are busy, and it's just like, so why would, you're asking somebody to invest, their time reading it. Well, not any money, but then their time in reading it. So what's it going to change? What's the promise? What's the outcome? All of those things go into what we call the positioning of the book, which is back cover copy, all the title elements, so that's kind of, you're trying to get it into people's hands because you believe in, I believe in the product and I believe that it can change, someone's life. That's the big thing, why I do it. But
I like that idea, like who's going to read this? And what's going to be, and what's going to be the impact? How's this going to actually change somebody's life for the better? That's good. Let me, this is a big macro question, like where, and this is going to be a multiple part question. So like, where are books going? We have more audio stuff. It does seem like this kind of Netflix streaming world, like people are writing books almost because they want it to be turned into some kind of Apple TV show. And, there's the video, there's the podcasting element now. It does seem like a book is like, oh, here we go.
Is that back to front?
We've already gotten there.
Front?
Yeah. So
like, drama, it's how to stop watching TV and start writing. It's so good. It's just come out.
The book is like, it's like a gateway drug now to all these different platforms, but the book is still very powerful. But are you worried that authors are trying to like skip the step of the book itself and trying to go into like the more multimedia space?
Oh God, that's a good question. But then if they are, they're not making their lives easier because they still have to go through the publishing process.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure they are. I mean, I think maybe people writing fiction and things with, okay, hopefully I could see this working as a TV adaptation or a film.
Right.
But actually, I think that would probably be discussed with the agent at the time when it was commissioned. So that would be a slightly different genre of book. And then it would be the publisher would probably be commissioning it, having a sort of TV or film option in mind. And they might even be having those conversations quite early on. I like your use of gateway drug. I mean, I think it definitely, does lead on to other things. Are people using it as a stepping stone? No. I mean, and kind of like, who cares? People are writing, and it's good to be ambitious and have that in mind. I think actually this could work as something very different. But also, I mean, we've literally just published Do Drama, and that is, writing a screenplay is very different from writing a book.
Yeah, 100%.
So sure, you've got the narrative and stuff, but I mean, what's the percentage of books that get made into films and TV adaptations? Netflix, they'll always be scouting for great books. But I think they're like the real writers who have written those books that are utterly compelling and, transport you to another world, won't be writing it with that in mind. Yeah. I think they'll be writing it because they're writers and they're creatives and that they have to do that.
It's a book, yeah. So that's good. It's like focus on make sure the main thing is the main thing. If you're going to write write a book.
Yeah, that's probably back to front as well, but that says do one thing well.
Yeah, perfect. What about audiobooks? Like, how has that changed the world? Or is it an enhancement?
Oh, it's interesting.
Good, bad, or is it?
I keep reading articles and stuff about audiobooks, and and I think some audiobooks, certainly with sort of celebrities reading them, do get a significant number of downloads. But a lot of ours are converted to audiobooks now. And it's kind of like when everyone was talking about ebooks and digital, and everyone's suddenly converted all their books to ebooks. And then we're sort of sat back waiting for this surge of downloads that never actually came. So we do the book. So all of our books, we do have an ebook version, but the print book, the print edition still outperforms the ebook and the audio by a mile. But I love the fact that people have got options now. And a lot of people, because I don't really, it's people in the gym, isn't it? People commuting to work. There's a time and a place for listening to audiobooks. So it's kind of a lifestyle thing. So we've probably about 50% of our list is audio. Obviously, you can't do anything with recipes in and things. And yeah, you can get them on Audible and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it's, a lot of publishers are constantly waiting for the miracle that's going to suddenly make them tons and tons of money. And then it never...
It sounds like most businesses.
Work either. Oh, well, back to print. But no, I mean, audio's here to stay, obviously. And as are ebooks, and I'm sure there'll be lots of other sort of things. But what is here to stay, Mark, and if you're thinking of, if you're wanting to wrap this up, is the print book. My God, it's had all these kind of knocks and blows along the way, from digital transformations and tech and and then audio and stuff. But people are still buying and reading print books.
I absolutely love print. It just there's something. It just, you can take notes in it, which is great. The smell of it, the lift of it,
portable.
It's got heft. The Kindle, I just can't fall in love with. I don't know. And I don't know. There's something so romantic about books. It's just fantastic touching something. Really
it's great.
It's such
present.
a powerful tool. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and also that's what I absolutely love about it, because, it's small, portable, and it's crammed full of ideas, and, that might change your life. I mean, what's not to like?
It's fantastic.
Literally. I mean, I'll be,
No, I know, for $25 or whatever. I mean, this book.
It's not even $25.
Whatever. I mean,
$95.
Yeah, when you buy a book, you're just you spend $10, $15, $20, and you're like, this could take me anywhere. I mean, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and it looks cool on your shelf.
Well, at the end of the day, that's what's most important. So when your friends come over, you're like, yeah, man, check out my books. Anyways, this may be a trick question. I don't know if you can say this, but I'm curious. We're big fans here at bookstores, obviously. Some independent bookshops we should check out anywhere in the world. I don't know if you're at liberty to say. I don't know if you want to pick some of your favorites, but we love a good bookshop.
Oh God!
Can you answer, or do you have to be diplomatic and say you love all bookstores?
No, I mean, what I can't say is which of my books I like best.
Whatever. It's like asking which one of your children. Which one of your children? I didn't ask you that. So.
Well, there's tons.
Or just what's some fun independent bookshops we should check out? It could be anywhere in the world.
There's one in Bath called Mr. B's Emporium that's got, nice chairs. I love the McNally Jackson ones in New York. They're just anywhere that's nicely curated and feels quite homely and warm and inviting. Yeah. Oh God, I mean, I'm, obviously Shakespeare and Co, but I don't even want to say that because everyone goes there. There was a mad one I went to in Portugal, and I can't even remember the name of it now. There's some quite cool ones in London. I actually do like the bookshops in art galleries. Yeah. I mean, I could sort of they're just so nicely curated and laid out and stuff. Whether it's because they're attached to an art gallery, I don't know, but it's always a lovely browsing experience.
I used to work across the street from the National Gallery of Art in DC, and they had this amazing cafeteria, and we'd go there literally walk into the museum, see some art, go downstairs, have a cappuccino, like a midday break, and you're just like, this is glorious. I mean, museums are they have commerce, they have food, they have art. What's not to like about a museum? I mean,
we should all be living in museums. Yeah.
Well, Miranda, this was great. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. Keep the Do Book Company going. And people can find you on the interwebs, the Twitter, the LinkedIn,
we're
Instagram,
on the interwebs.
all the good stuff.
Yeah, the dobook.co, just .co, and on Instagram it's at dobookco. And then we're just changing distributor in America, actually. So the books are going to be available through Consortium, which is a massive big distributor, who service lots of independent bookshops, actually. And yeah.
The metaverse is next, right? Will you be in the metaverse then?
No. Well, actually, I was speaking to somebody about the metaverse, and they were quite well placed to talk about it because they work in one of the big companies. It's not gonna be a place on the internet.
State of mind.
However, it's going to be a state of mind. However, the books will become more experiential. Yeah. So, for example, we've got a book on breathing. So you could actually kind of go in and maybe do some breathing with the author or together or what have you. So you'd experience the book in a different way, which I quite like. But in terms of like, are we all going to be walking down the street and seeing a Do bookshop in Google land? Yeah, I don't think that is going to happen so much. So I'm not going to be buying my bookshop.
The real estate is on hold. I love it. Well, Miranda, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining Brigadoon Radio.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Bye.